Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. Humza Yousaf is a very desperate man. He's desperate for ideas, he's desperate for approval, he's desperate for people to respect him. But most of all, of course, he's desperate for independence, because with independence he will have total control, he thinks. However, people in Scotland aren't stupid, and they know that independence would be an absolute folly, especially with the likes of the SNP running things, and so he cannot ever hope to get independence through a ballot box, because people just don't want it. Sure, there's some people that do, but the majority don't, and he doesn't understand democracy. And so they keep looking for new and innovative ways to try and force independence through. Some of them are laughably stupid. Most of them are laughably stupid. And so eventually he has to come back on those same sad old ideas. They pull them out, they dress them up, they give them a new lick of paint and sometimes call them by a whole new name in order that they may get through and people don't notice that it's the same sad old ideas. And so his latest wheeze is to go to the SNP's cupboard of bright ideas, open the door and look inside and see what they've got. Well, this cupboard is bare, and old Mother Hubbard himself has got to just go back and say, hey, I've got a new idea. We'll go and have a de facto referendum. The same idea we've tried many, many times and which has been rejected many, many times because A, it's stupid, B, it doesn't work, C, they'll never get a mandate to even pull it off, and D, he's about to go into a set of elections where they're going to have their arse handed to them. Maybe they should give them the de facto referendum and then say, hey, look, you lost, and then call it quits. Who knows? That's assuming they're still there. Anyway, we'll take a look at this article to see why this sad, sad man is so empty and devoid of any bright ideas or any way forward for independence. Here goes. So, Humza Yousaf in sign of panic. And he says a rollback to the de facto referendum is on the cards. Remember the de facto referendum. If we get enough votes, we'll call it a referendum, even though it's not a referendum, even though international law won't recognise it, the UK government won't recognise it, and the majority of people in Scotland are dead against independence. Never mind, Humza. Never mind. You keep rolling out your sad, tired, old ideas. Anyway, a motion lodged only weeks ago is already facing the cut from the SNP leader, who said he is keen to look at changes after the internal backlash. Because even people in his own party, he had this other wise idea saying if they get not a majority of seats, but the most seats, that would be the equivalent of a mandate. So they could end up with 34% of the seats. That would make them the biggest party. And they'd say that would be a mandate for independence. Clearly not. And then they immediately rode back because his own side couldn't work out what he meant. You had Beryl was sitting there in Parliament and he was saying about a majority of seats rather than the most seats, and he was questioned about it and he couldn't answer it either. And now it's being quietly dropped because they realise how stupid it looks and it sounds, and it is. So again, they're going back to the same old idea of, let's have a virtual mandate, a pretendy mandate, and then we can pretend that we've won. And everyone else will go, no, morons, aren't they? Anyway, Humza Yousaf said he will consider amendments to a controversial plan to take over the upcoming general election, as his biggest critics yet say it's another sign of panic for the party. They are absolutely cacking themselves. They've got nowhere to go. They've run out of road, they've run out of ideas, and they're very quickly running out of money and support. It's marvellous, isn't it? Anyway, the so-called de facto referendum plan, which could see the SNP attempt to kickstart independence negotiations with Westminster if the party wins the most Scottish seats in the upcoming general election, has even been a sticking point for those within the SNP. It's led to alternative suggestions from Westminster leader Beryl Flynn. Now, we talked about Beryl's idea and he said that he got it wrong and then he misunderstood and he doesn't, because nobody knows. Nobody has a clue what is going on. He said he wanted to see the SNP make gains in that general election, expected to be held sometime in next year, probably May now. It was looking like it was going to be October next year, but apparently Sunak is looking at May, which is why they're kind of gearing up with various changes. Although if they want to go, they need to get the interest rates down big time, and they need to get the taxes down big time. Anyway, Mr. Yousaf has hinted at amendments to the motion that has been approved by the party's core membership. 12 men and a dog, isn't it? Pamela Nash, Chief Executive of Scotland and Union, said, "This is another sign of panic from Humza Yousaf. The idea that by winning the most seats, the SNP would be able to demand independence was ridiculous, as even politicians in his own party told him." Tell you how bad an idea it is. Pete Wishart, and we all know that Wishart comes up with monumentally stupid ideas. Even Wishart said it was a bad idea. It never would work. And now you know, if you've got Wishart telling you that, you know it's a desperately bad idea. She added, "It is no surprise he now wants to water that down, but trying to make this election about the Constitution simply won't be accepted by the Scottish people. The best thing the SNP could do is to abandon these de facto plans altogether and focus on people's real priorities." And we've covered these recently with the health, with social care, with, well, you name it, the economy, transport, infrastructure, energy for God's sake. Energy costs are so high. Income tax, the problem with substances and alcohol. There are so many things that the SNP are failing people on. And they constantly push this independence plan because it's all they have. And if that's all you've got nothing. Anyway, Mr. Yousaf and Mr. Flynn have jointly put a motion forward to the SNP conference next month, and we will be following that, which makes clear that winning more seats than any other party north of the border in that vote would see the Scottish Government empowered to begin immediate negotiations with the UK Government to give a democratic effect to Scotland becoming an independent country. No, it won't. No, it just won't. How could that possibly be? More people will have voted not SNP than will have voted for SNP. And therefore, you've got no mandate whatsoever. A mandate can only come from a referendum that is 50% plus one vote. And even then, I would make it you'd have to win a referendum to change constitutional matters by 55%, just to make sure that there is no room for efforts. For mistake or for any kind of querying on it. It would have to be a hard majority. And then if you get the 55%, then you have your independence. You don't need to fight for status quo. Status quo exists. Only no four chords, but, long-serving MP, there we go, I just mentioned. Long-serving SNP MP, Pete Wishart, however, has suggested the motion should be amended to allow for such talks to take place only if the SNP wins a majority of votes in the election, saying this would give the policy real democratic credibility. I actually find myself agreeing with Pete Wishart, and that's a very odd and unusual thing for me to do. But he is right. If they win the most votes, not the most seats, not the most, not a majority of seats, not the most seats, not being the biggest party, but actually the most votes, and that isn't going to happen, is it? Such a change would be in line with former First Minister Nicola Sturgeon's plans to use the next general election as a de facto referendum on independence. Now, she looked at this, I've said this before, she looked at it and went, yes, that's a very good idea, it's a very interesting idea, can we make it work? No, because it hands her opposition a big mallet. Because if you don't win that, if you don't get the absolute majority, they will say, well, you've had your vote. And the mandate is for the status quo. People have said no. And so you don't need to go on about this anymore. You don't get your independence. You've had it, you've called it, you've lost it. And she knew that. And so that's why she said no. And for all her faults, and boy does she have many, I will give her one thing. When it comes to politics, she was shrewd. And she knew that this was a poison chalice. Anyway, with the matter to be debated at the SNP's conference in Aberdeen in October, well, outside of Aberdeen, a long way outside, you need public transport to get there, good luck. Mr. Yousaf said, we will obviously consider amendments as they come up. He said, I would be quite keen, if possible, to look at the amendments. He said, and if there are amendments we can take, we will look to consider them. There aren't. There basically aren't. There is no way of going forward. The sad, sad man with no idea what he's doing. The only way you can do it is to win an absolute majority, and it means an absolute majority of votes, not seats, and that isn't going to happen. They lost, and they lost, and they lost, and they're going to lose, and going to lose, and going to lose. And it's just going on about the potential there. So they've got a couple of votes coming up. You've got next Thursday is going to be interesting with Rutherglen, and then you're going to have the Westminster elections, and then you're going to have the Holyrood elections in a couple of years' time. So you've got all these elections coming up in short order, plus there'll be council elections, by-election, whatever, and it's all going a bit peak-tong for the SNP, and I honestly think his days are numbered. I think he's done. Anyway, I shall stop there. I shall come up. We shall finish the video. It's hard being Humza Yousaf, isn't it? You've got a dying party, falling membership, not enough money. Your own people don't respect you. You've got no authority within your own party. The people who challenge you on things like, Fergus Ewing and whatever, and Kate Forbes, they are more popular within the party than you are, and you don't have any idea of how to push forward the things that you actually want, and surrounded by fools and incompetence that you have picked. No wonder Scotland's in the state it is. Anyway, that's enough of his problems. I'll move on to the next video now, which is going to be a bit of a worry for people in Glasgow if they happen to live near it. So keep an eye out for that. Anyway, until next time, stay safe, stay well, and don't forget, if you beat him, he'll never come back, because he is done. Thanks for watching. Bye.